Alright, YouTube. We're going to go over really quickly today. Well, not really quickly. We're going to go over what you should know before you go and purchase, whether it's a used or a new moped, and really motorcycle as well. I'm not really going to cover street bikes, but this is, I would say, applicable for mopeds, scooters. These are both scooters. Mopeds is motor pedal moped. These are both scooters, but I'd say it's applicable for as like enduros as well. Maybe dirt bikes, not so much street bikes. But we're just going to go over what you should know before you go and purchase one. Things to look for, and what you're looking for in a motorcycle or moped or scooter. You're gonna see my shadow a little bit in this video, but we're gonna cover two strokes first. This is a two-stroke. It's a Apparilla. They're about a $3,000 scooter. You can get them on sale for $2,500, somewhere around there, I think, if I remember right. But for two strokes, you got two different systems on some two strokes, whether it's older or newer. There's you got your oil injection or your premix. That means you have to premix two-stroke oil into the fuel, because unlike four strokes, it's not like an oil bath system where it's got oil surrounding the parts that are moving and so on. The oil actually comes from the fuel itself, the oil you premix into it. Now, if that's, you don't see premix too often anymore. Weed eaters, they're premix, as long as it's a two-stroke. But on the two strokes that are oil injected, they're very nice. They, all you have to do is you fill it up with fuel. Every sometimes third or fourth fill up. Just depends on how big your tank is. You got to, check your tank. This is where the oil is for this Apparilla. Just put oil in there. The downside to an oil-filled or an oil injection system is sometimes the injection system fails. It stops working. That means you're going to be going down the road 45 miles an hour, something like that, and either the engine's going to lock up, the engine's going to start losing power, and then seize, in other words, lock up, or it will, blow a hole through the piston, ruin other parts of the engine. Now, I don't want to scare you away from either kind of bike, whether it's a two-stroke, four-stroke, motorcycle, moped, whatever. I don't want to scare you away, because I love two strokes. What you get from a two-stroke, the difference that I can explain just quickly from a two-stroke to a four-stroke, let me set this paper down, is when you're driving a four or two-stroke, as long as it's got an expansion chamber. Now, this is an expansion chamber right here. It's the part of the exhaust that actually lets the exhaust out, and it's going to kind of reverberate. It's going to kind of reverberate and echo in here, and it actually makes it so it kind of acts like a turbo. Now, for you guys that know all about these things, I don't need you guys to comment, tell me I'm telling it absolutely wrong. This is for both the people who don't know anything about engines and the people who do know about engines. So I'm just trying to explain it to those, in layman's terms. So, but yeah, it kind of echoes, and it'll make it so, two strokes kind of do this anyways, but when you got a really good pipe, like this is the stock pipe. If you get a really nice, $200-300 pipe, it can change your acceleration dramatically. But what two strokes do is, when you're sitting, this idles at 2,000 RPM. And when you get up 4,000 RPM, about 5,000 RPM, you start hitting what is called a power band. A power band is it's a burst of power. It's like coming onto a turbo. It starts pulling really hard, and it's fun. This is a 50 cc, so there's not much of a power band. The bigger the engine, the bigger the power band. The better the pipe as well, better the power band. And some bikes actually run better with the stock pipe, unless you absolutely change everything out. You port and polish the engine, or not port the engine. Polish is when you have a valve head, so it doesn't go along with two strokes. But sometimes they run just fine with those. Sometimes they like different pipes right off the bat. So, but yeah, they have a power band, and that's where off the line two strokes can be a little slow, a little sluggish, unless you got a manual. You got your clutch, and you can preload the engine, get it up to about 5,000, and not dump it, but get up there and just get up and go. But when you got a fully automatic, that's what this is. It's a full auto. You got your belt right here. We're going to go into that here in a minute. But when you got that, it just shifts for you. It doesn't even shift. It just changes. Goes from slow to fast, so on and so forth. Now this one's a very fancy Italian moped. It's got all digital dash there, as you can see. And I got this one running a little while ago. Running great. And just like I said in the very beginning of the video, my oil injection system failed on me at about exactly 45 miles an hour. That's why I said 45 earlier. It failed on me going 45 miles an hour and blew a hole through the piston. So I'll see if that engine's savable. If not, I'll probably just put a whole new engine in there and just put some stupid power plant in there, like stupid powerful, like a big old 250 4-stroke or something like that. I'd really like this. This is injected as well. See, there's carbureted and injected. You don't see injected systems very often. You're going to see carbureted more than injected right now. Now, this is 2014. It might completely change in a year, 2-3 years. But just right now, that's what it is. You see more carbureted than injected, unless you get a brand new something or other. This is a 2008, I think, 2009. But it's a direct injection. An injection and carburation, or carburetor, is how the engine receives its fuel to run. And injected will give you more power. Carbureted still gives you good power, but a direct injection, better fuel mileage, so on and so forth. I'm trying not to ramble too much. Let's see what else I got here. Now, two strokes, they don't like dust. And what I mean by that is you got to keep the air filters pretty clean. You got to you got to do a checkup on them from time to time. One of their biggest issues is if you're driving down the street and somehow your air filter fell off and you got a big old choke of dirt in it, or if you were driving a dirt bike and it was two-stroke and you got a big old whiff of dust and dirt and grime into the engine, they don't handle it as well as a 4-stroke because the tolerances in a 2-stroke are tighter. So they don't like dust. Like I said before, don't let me scare you away from anything. Don't let me decide for you. You're the deciding force here on whether you're going to get a 2-stroke, a 4-stroke, or whatnot. You know what I mean? Spark plugs on these, they sometimes they work just fine, but you will get fouled out spark plugs on 2-strokes a little more often than the 4-stroke. Now, not always will they foul out. What foul out means is when you're driving, and then either you're driving and it happens, or you stop and you go to start again. It just either is not going to make a hot enough spark to start the engine and run it, or the spark plug will get, it's not making a good enough spark, or it just stops making a spark. Sometimes you can just clean them off. and they work again. Sometimes you have to put a brand new spark plug in it. So that's just one thing as well. 4 strokes, you get a little less of a fouled out spark plug, unless you're, it's running really, really rich. But other than that, it's not bad at all. Let's see. Now, when you do store a 2-stroke engine, you should, if you can, get some 2-stroke oil into the cylinder to store it all winter long. Now, some people may say that's a little much, but you really don't want to dry start a 2-stroke. 2 different ways to do it is, put a cap, take the cap off, 4-stroke bottle of oil or something like that much oil, dump it into the cylinder, turn it over with the spark plug out, and then make sure you have a fuel stabilizer, and it should be able to sit for a very long time. Now, let's see. You want to also figure out what kind of brakes you have on your piece of equipment, whether you got disc brakes or you've got drum brakes. I don't have any drum brakes here to show you, but here is a disc, plain and simple. It's that piece right there. Discs are better than drums. Drums, if you're going to have them, it's best to have them in the back. But if it's got front and back, it's okay. Just keep your brakes maintained, whether it's a disc or a drum. It doesn't matter. Keep them maintained. Check on them. It's as easy as looking down into the brake system, and you'll see a piece of metal with a bit of ceramics is what it is, and that wears away. Once that gets down to metal, or your brakes start to squeak really badly, that usually means your brakes are worn out. That goes with cars as well. Now, with a 4-stroke, I'm going to kind of go into 4 strokes. I might go back and forth here. With a 4-stroke, you got a little more torquey power off the line. Now, if you put a 4-stroke next to a 2-stroke, they're both automatic. The 4-stroke's usually going to pull off the line first. The 2-stroke will beat it once it's off the line and gets to that power band. Now, this is a 50 and that is a 150. And if this one's running absolutely perfect, they're close to the same power. Yes, this one would be a little more torquey, a little more power, but it's not too far from the actual power. Now, if this was 100 and that is a 50, that was 100 cc, that would be almost identical power. Even when you jump onto the power band, sometimes it might be a little more. Now, if I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but that's about how it is for 2-strokes and 4-strokes. I'm just trying to explain it the best way I can. Now, with a 4-stroke, you do have oil changes. Now, whether you get a 2-stroke, 4-stroke, if it's a Chinese moped, motorcycle, whatever, they're not bad bikes. Now, if you're buying it to just drive, no maintenance, well, there's always going to be maintenance on everything. It doesn't matter whether it was, $60 or $5,000. There's always going to be maintenance. Sorry for clearing my throat so much. Got a lot of smog in the area right now. But there's oil changes. Now, like I was saying, with the 2-stroke, 4-stroke, especially the 4-strokes, if you get it Chinese, make sure you change every single fluid before you start the engine up. This owner's manual with this scooter actually said in the owner's manual, do not attempt to start with the oil that comes in the engines. It is packing oil only. And a lot of people will start the engine up and run them around until the oil change needs to be done. And then they complain about Chinese mopeds or motorcycles are cheapy, the engines don't last, and that's because they're not doing the correct oil change. You got to change the oil right off the bat. And if it is brand new, put a braking oil in there and then change it in the time you're supposed to. It's usually about 500 miles on a scooter. A regular oil change on 4-stroke scooters is about every 1,000 miles, because they only use about a quart of oil, so that's pretty normal. Make sure as well with a 4-stroke that you put an ATV or motorcycle oil into them. They do not like car oil. Yes, car oil is better than dirty oil or no oil. Absolutely, bar none. But ATV oil and motorcycle oil has been designed to take the heat of an air-cooled engine. Air-cooled engines get up to a much higher temperature than water-cooled like a car. Hello, Oliver. That is my cat named Oliver. And that is my cat named Ethel. They're come to say hi. They want to be in the video too. Alright. 15 minutes into this, I don't think I'm doing too bad. But make sure you got good oil in it. Make sure you change it out of every 1,000 miles. And even with the, this is a hydraulic brake system, make sure you change that fluid out too. It doesn't hurt to leave that stuff in there, but if, you squeeze it and it's got that kind of a squeak feeling to it, that's just the cheapy oil that the Chinese bikes come with. And this is a Chinese bike that we're looking at currently. That has been horribly spray painted. I'm going to be painting it this beautiful khaki green, going with a military motif on it. But yeah, Chinese, they're really not all that bad. Now, if you want less maintenance and less repairs, I would say don't get a Chinese. But if you're a mechanic, you're mechanically inclined, or you're looking to, do a little more repair, I don't mean repair, I mean, a little more maintenance, because these are kind of divas sometimes, and once you get them up to par, once they are running great, they run beautifully. This has 3,609 miles on it. No issues whatsoever. None whatsoever. And I know another guy that has one that's got close to 10. Now this has 6,000 on it, which that one's dead right now. Now, another thing to look at, is it power start or is it kickstart or is it both? This scooter not currently, but it is both kickstart and power start, which is a nice thing, because if your battery goes dead and you're out in the middle of nowhere, you can go ahead and kickstart it and get it to start. Here's kickstart right here. Now, kickstart means when you kick this down, you're actually engaging into the engine and you're turning the engine over by kicking it down. Some engines are easy and some engines are hard. Now, this bike is a power start only. That means when the battery dies on this, you're stranded. Now, it shouldn't die, because you should have a good battery in it. If your scooters are going to sit over the wintertime, you're not going to start them up or anything, make sure you put like a battery tender on these. You can pick them up, $20 at Walmart for just the 1.5, and make sure that's the smart charge if it's going to be plugged in all the time. Do not plug it into, the old analogs are wonderful. That's what I use 90% of the time. But the old analogs will just sit there and cook the battery until it's dead, because they don't know when to shut off. You're the one to tell it when it's charged or not. So make sure you just leave them plugged in, or you go out and check on them every month or so and plug in the battery tender or whatever, and make sure the batteries are charged up. If you're wanting to start them every so often to charge the battery up, the engines usually have to run a little while, especially if it's completely dead or close to dead. Half an hour isn't over the top. Half an hour's, that's a little much, but 20 minutes, 15 minutes, that's pretty close. You need to let it run for a little bit. Now, hydraulic brakes and cable pull brakes, that's a difference as well. These are both hydraulic. That means when you press this, it's pressing a little piston, as you can see right there. It presses it and presses fluid into this brake line, which then pushes brake fluid into either the front cylinder or back brake cylinder. And that makes it really easy. Like, you barely have to tap on these to get a full stop out of it. Now, if you got a cable pull, you might be looking to push it a little more on it. And cable pulls, I've noticed, are a little easier to lock up sometimes. So yeah. Let's see, I'm just trying to think of anything else there might be. Another thing to note is how heavy is the bike you're looking at. Now, that might be not a big thing, a huge thing for some, but, you know, if, say, your bike tips over, can you pick it up by yourself? You should be able to. You know, because if it's too heavy for you to pick up, then it's probably likely that it's a little too heavy for you to maybe maneuver through traffic to be able to get out of the way quickly. Now, yes, Harley Davidsons are wonderful bikes. I love them. They're great bikes. And yes, they're cruisers. They're not a sports bike unless, you know, you got a Harley Davidson Sportster or something like that. But when you got a heavy bike, you know, it's a little harder to quickly maneuver through traffic. Now, you know, I know I'm going to get some guys saying, you know, that's not true. You know, I can get through it just fine. Yeah, but you also are probably a bigger guy that can, I'm not saying fat, but muscular, bigger guy that can push it through traffic. And that's just fine. That's just wonderful. So, and if somebody, you know, if I could buy a Harley Davidson, I probably would. In a heartbeat. I love them. They're nice. I like Indians a little bit better, though. Yeah, I said it. Indian motorcycles. Anyways. Let's see. Okay, one more thing I can see here on my list. I made a little list for you guys, so I didn't ramble too much. Because I know some of you guys like it, some of you guys don't. So, gears. Now, with your shifting, you got three different options, three different things that you see. And this is going to cover motorcycles and mopeds. There's very few mopeds that are semi-automatic or manual. They're almost all automatics. And there's good and bad about all of them. With the semi-automatic, that means you're going to be shifting gears. That means, you know, you push a stick up and down with your foot, and it shifts it into the next gear, and you got to, you know, shift back up. And with a semi-automatic, when you shift, you know, you're pulling back, and when you go to shift, you have to push this up all the way before you shift into the next gear, or enough to where you can get it into the next gear. If you're looking at a manual motorcycle, you still got to do the same thing, but you got a clutch pull. Now, if I had a clutch pull, it would be on this side. This is a brake, which is same for semi-automatic or automatic. It's going to be a brake on this side, but if it's a manual, it's going to be a clutch on this side. Hello, Cody. But you're going to, you know, have a clutch pull, and you pull the clutch, shift it into the next gear, and then let the clutch out. You know, it's going to be like a manual car, except with just pushing your foot like this up and down. So you got to, you know, get used to pulling and, you know, listening to the engine and not killing it at a green light. We can look at this moped for a little bit now. But, you know, you got your automatics as well. These are both automatic. And it's a full automatic. Now, what that means, that one's covered up. This one isn't. But it's a smaller system, so you can't see it as well. Automatic is like a snowmobile. Snowmobiles are a full automatic. I can't remember what the clutch system is called exactly. But what it does is this system here, the belt is always moving when the engine is running. It's the same for that one. It's probably the same for most. But this is always moving. This belt is what actually propels you forwards. The engine transfers its power through this belt into the back wheel. Hello, kitty. As you can see, you can actually move the back wheel, as you can see there, by twisting this. Now this system, All right, kitty, go away. This system, like I said, this is always moving. And when you get up to a certain RPM, you start taking off. There's a clutch system in here that engages and starts moving the back wheel. Now, when you start speeding up, this pulley in the front here starts to squeeze this belt, and it moves from the inside of this belt, or the inside of this pulley, to the outside. And this one does just the opposite. It will move open and go to the outside, to the middle. Now that kind of does the same thing like a bicycle does. When you change gears, you know, if you got a big, sorry, cat's in the way again. If you've got a really small gear in the front, you know, shifted into the small, and you shift into the largest gear in the back, you can pedal really fast, but be going, you know, 1 mile an hour. If you change that all around, if you go with the biggest gear in the front and the smallest gear in the back, you're going to be pushing really hard, you know, but once you get up to speed, you're going to be really fast with the same amount of pedals. That's called gear ratio, or just ratio. And it changes its ratio when it starts speeding up, because there's weights in this piece, and I believe in this piece as well, that they change once they get to a certain RPM. They start getting faster and faster. The weights spin out and start squeezing and letting go. That's how that system works. The only downside to this system is sometimes this belt does break. Now, make sure from your factory or from your dealership you figure out, man, you're being really kind of in the way today. Make sure from your dealership you figure out what time these belts need to be changed. Every 10,000 miles? Is it every 3,000? Is it every 6,000 miles? How many miles can you go before you have to, you know, change that again? Because once this breaks, you're stranded. You're going to be stopped. You're not going to be moving anywhere. So, you know, for an Italian bike like this is probably a $50, $60 piece. On the Chinese one over there, very low cost to do any repairs on these. That's another thing. And a belt for that was $6, $6 or $7 on eBay. Really, really, really cheap, and it works just great. What was I going to say? Oh, as well as these automatic ones with the belts, they have this piece back here. This is filled with gear oil. Now, I've been told you should be changing this oil out I've been told like 3,000 to 6,000 miles. Sorry about that. My camera died. So, like I was saying, one of two things can happen if you don't change the oil in the rear end of these. A lot of people will even drive without ever changing them. Just change them like every 3, 6, 10,000 miles, somewhere around there. Figure out, you know, you can go online, Google it. They can usually, you know, somebody on there knows when the rear end should be changed and what type of oil to use. Because if you don't change it, you can go into full skid, that rear end locks up, and you will most likely wreck unless you're a really good rider. But just touching base on oil again, and this is going to go for really nice, you know, enduros, motorcycles that use a I'm trying to think, a filter system, something that actually uses a oil filter. That's the name I was looking for. Because these don't necessarily have an oil filter. They've got an oil screen, and you just rinse them off and put them back in. Oil filters need to be changed every oil change. And I was gonna, like I was gonna say, and was saying until my camera shut off. Make sure you use a good oil, and make doubly sure you're using a good oil filter. Do not use a Fram oil filter. Now, I know a few guys out there are going to be like, no, Fram oil filters are great. I've used them on everything that I've owned my whole life, so on and so forth. But I've heard of enough stories in my life, and had it happen to a friend, where they are using a Fram oil filter. he was using a Fram oil filter in his, I think it was a 650 Ninja, Kawasaki Ninja. It's like a 2011 or 2010. And it locked up. Now the reason why is when you go into a high rev, which those engines are made to go high rev, you know, that's, you get a lot of power there. 4-stroke, you know, high rev, man, you hit in 4 strokes. Yes, they do have a power band as well. And when you know when they're set up like a bullet bike engine, there's a huge power band. Now I've driven 650 bullet bike type bike, 750cc 3-cylinder 2-stroke. That's got a huge power band as well. But that's actually back here. I'll show it to you. But when you hit the higher revs on those 4-stroke engines, there it is there. It's a Kawasaki Mach 3, 1974. Got it running for a customer a while back, and I need to get it finished. Probably looks familiar to some of y'all. But, like I was saying, when you hit a higher rev with a cheap Fram oil filter, what happens is the oil demand goes up. The engine is asking and needing more oil at a higher rate. That means the oil is going to be coming through that filter really quickly and into the engine and back in again, and it's going to circulate really quickly to keep the engine cool and lubricated so it doesn't destroy itself. Now what happens with the cheap oil filters, there might be another brand out there that's just the same. It's really, really cheapy. When you're doing maintenance, here's another thing really quick. When you're doing maintenance on really anything, even your cars, don't cheap out. Because when you cheap out, that's when you have issues, whether it's a week from now or 5 years from now. But don't cheap out on the oil filters, especially if you've got a high revving engine. Because what happens is you're going really, really, you got a lot of oil going through. And what happens is, I believe the oil is being sucked through the oil filter and into the oil pump and so on and so forth. I don't think it works the other way around. I think it's pulling it through, because what happens is the oil filter goes like that, and they actually suck closed in a matter of 2 to 3 seconds. And that's a long time. It can happen in a second, just 1 second. The engine will absolutely and completely seize, lock up, and if you are not on your game and you can't pull that clutch fast enough, that rear end's going to lock up, your brain's going to go, what's going on? And the next thing you're going to know is you're either underneath a vehicle or you're on the side of the road in a lot of pain. Now, if it was me, and there's even a $10 difference between oil filters, there's a cheap one for $5 and a really nice one for 10, 15. I would go with the nice one, because I wouldn't want that to happen to me. I don't feel like flipping off my bike and ending possibly, or meeting my demise possibly. So it's just a smart thing. Even with brakes, if you can get a good brake system or good brake pad, it's really nice. So I'm going to be going with brake pads on this soon. I'm going to be getting the best brake pads. The cheap brake pads are about $3 for the front and about $5 in the back. The nice ones are $10 in the front and I think $12 in the back. It's worth it. They last longer as well. Brake pads anyways. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I really didn't touch down on oil or air-cooled versus water-cooled. Water-cooled, you got to make sure you got antifreeze in your system. You got to check that as well, along with your, if you got a 2-stroke, your oil. Check your oil every so often as well. Make sure you don't, go over however many miles you're supposed to be going before each oil change. Drive safely out there. Either be watching for motorcycles or be careful, and don't be an idiot and zip through traffic, going like this, flying through. Now, lane splitting, I believe it's called. It's not legal here in the state that I'm in, but it's when there's a lot of traffic on the freeway. You can go in between everybody. Be careful, because there's those idiots that aren't happy when you guys do that, and they open their door. And it would be your fault, unfortunately. You're the one moving. Unless you got a really good lawyer. But yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed. If you've got any questions, I'll answer them to the best of my ability about 4-stroke, 2-stroke, motorcycle, moped, scooter, street bike, bullet bike, enduros. I'm pretty sure I said enduros already. I like enduros. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope I didn't talk too much. I hope I covered everything and gave you guys some things to think about right before you go and buy that bike, especially with used and new. If you're looking at a used 4-stroke, check the oil. Pull the oil dipstick and see how dirty the oil is. If it's black, it has not been taken care of and it needs to have an oil change. If there's not really too much to check on a 2-stroke, I don't think. Other than, check your antifreeze. Check the fluids, as many fluids as you can check there while you're looking at it with the person who's selling it. Check as many fluids. Make sure they're clear, the color they're supposed to be. Check how many miles that they have on it. This one's got 3,600. That one's got 6,100, I think. But check the miles. See how many miles, even if it's, let me take a look at this bike. You will go and check it out. You pull it up on your phone. How many, look up reviews. See how long they last. If they, 10,000 miles is, I'm close. 6,900 or 6,093. See if they last, a long time. See, if they only go 10,000 miles and they get a lot of problems. Or if they go 30 or 40,000 miles or 100,000 miles. I don't think I'm not sure if that's possible in a moped, but if everything's possible if you take care of your equipment. And that goes for anything. One more thing I need to cover. Don't run 85 octane in pretty much any single cylinder engine. 4-wheeler, motorcycle, moped, anything like that. Every motorcycle I've ever worked on, I've never seen it anywhere I've never seen any motorcycle that says that it can take, 87 octane. I'll actually show you on this one. And it says it on that one in the owner's manual that these, warning, use unleaded fuel, minimum octane rating 90. So this bike should only use 90 octane or above. Now that doesn't mean, I'm going to put 85 octane in it. Oh, it runs fine. I don't see what they're talking about. It's running just fine. No, you're not going to see the effects right away. You're going to see the effects later on down the road when it counts, where your payments are finally off on it and it's going to start dying. Just run 91. I mean, these things are getting, upwards of 50 to, some are 100 miles to the gallon. Why skimp out on them? You know what I mean? That's what I run in this, 91 octane all the time. Don't run cheap fuel in them. And if you're hurting for cash, don't run the cheapest, at least. Run an 87, 88. Something like that. Here in my state, you can get 85 is the cheapest. 87 or 88 is mid-grade. And 91 is top grade, unless you go down to the special gas station that can sell up to 112 octane. But that's not recommended either. Also, check your state laws. See if you need a motorcycle license to drive your moped or scooter. Some states do not require. The last state I lived in didn't even require a license, period, to drive one, as long as it couldn't go over 40 miles an hour. Now, some state, you check your state, laws. You can buy a moped, scooter, motorcycle without a license. That doesn't mean you can drive one. I hope you guys enjoyed. Like I said before, hope I didn't gab too much. I feel like I covered everything that needs to be covered. I hope you guys enjoyed. Knowledge is power, my friends. Knowledge is power. Hope you have a good one. Drive safely. Watch for the bikes out there. And be safe. Hope you have a good one. Drive safe.